The chamber lights dimmed as the human president stepped onto the cold metallic floor of the Galactic Council Hall, the murmurs of 100 alien delegations fading into a smug, anticipatory silence. They believed they had already won. They believed the small blue world at the edge of the Orion Spur would finally bow, finally break, finally learn its place among species who considered themselves wiser, older, and infinitely more powerful. The president didn't sit. He waited, hands clasped behind his back, watching the councilors posture behind their polished desks. Their robes shimmered with authority, but beneath the elegance he sensed something far uglier, a belief that humanity's patience meant submission. The council speaker wasted no time. With a theatrical flourish of his tendrils, he declared Earth a destabilizing anomaly, whose refusal to surrender scientific patents, mining rights, and defense control threatened galactic unity. The chamber echoed with forced agreement. Others chimed in, layering insults with diplomatic phrasing, calling humans impulsive, unevolved, unpredictable, a species that needed to be guided for its own good. A few didn't even bother hiding their disdain. They spoke of disciplinary occupation forces, trade seizure, and corrective restructuring of Terran governance. All of it phrased as if they were offering a generous favor. The president listened without interrupting. His calmness unsettled a few who expected yelling or pleading, but most assumed it was fear. The speaker continued, now demanding that humanity hand over its newly developed FTL corridor technology, and allow council inspectors unrestricted entry into Earth's defense grid. According to him, the galaxy's safety depended on stripping humanity of every advancement they had earned. He called it necessary supervision. The president called it what it was, the final attempt to disarm Earth before forcing it into submission. Behind the speaker's podium, a holographic model of Earth rotated slowly, annotated with red tactical markers. The council didn't hide their intent anymore. They assumed the human leader was too cornered, too isolated, too desperate to resist. Delegations laughed openly when he remained silent. They interpreted restraint as fear, discipline as defeat. The president understood their mistake long before they understood his resolve. A counselor from the Veiled Dominion stood, pointing a claw at the president, while boasting that human trade lanes were already being choked. Another from the Kirax Combine warned that any further refusal would trigger a blockade enforced by 6 allied fleets. They bragged about the number of warships at their disposal, the centuries of military doctrine they possessed, the inevitability of Terran capitulation. It was all so predictable, attempts to intimidate a species they still viewed as a recent curiosity rather than an equal force. When the speaker finally demanded a verbal pledge of surrender, the hall grew still. Every alien present leaned forward, waiting for the inevitable compliance, the broken whisper, the acceptance of their superiority. Instead, the president raised his head and spoke with a quiet finality that cut through the chamber more sharply than any shout could. "I came here today hoping you would choose reason," he said, voice steady, unshaken. "You've threatened our borders, sabotaged our stations, interfered with our scientists. You have mocked our patience as weakness. You have mistaken our silence for fear." A ripple moved through the room, but he continued without raising his tone. "So hear me clearly. Humanity will not surrender. Humanity will not be intimidated. And humanity will not tolerate one more violation of our sovereignty." Some counselors hissed. Others smirked. A few finally sensed the weight behind his words and grew uneasy. The president stepped forward, placing one hand on the edge of the central podium. "You had every chance to avoid what comes next," he said. "But since peace is the last thing you respect, then enough talking. It's time for war." The hall erupted, shouts, disbelief, laughter, outrage. They thought it was bravado from a leader cornered. They thought it was the outcry of a desperate species about to be crushed. They didn't see the subtle transmission the president sent the moment he finished speaking. They didn't know what had already been set in motion hours earlier. They didn't realize that humanity's restraint had never been fear, it had been mercy. And mercy had just ended. Encrypted orders rippled across the Terran sphere the moment the president's declaration left the council chamber, activating protocols so deeply hidden that even most of Earth's own military believed them theoretical. Satellites that had drifted silently for decades abruptly pivoted toward classified relay points. Long dormant stations buried under crusted ice on Europa began transmitting. In uncharted pockets of space, dark facilities disguised as debris fields lit up with synchronized pulses, each signal a confirmation that humanity's contingency, the one designed for the day diplomacy failed, was finally active. Across Earth, the sudden shift was subtle but unmistakable to those who had been waiting for it. Defense ministers received messages that bypassed every normal chain of command, marked with a single word: resolve. Generals who had retired quietly reappeared in command hubs that civilians didn't know existed. Deep space listening posts sealed their blast shutters as autonomous systems took control. Nothing was chaotic. Everything moved with terrifying precision, the kind of preparation only possible when a species had planned for this moment long before the galaxy even suspected. The Council had always believed humans were reckless innovators who stumbled forward blindly, inventing too quickly and thinking too little. They never realized how carefully humanity hid the most important developments. Earth's public fleets, the patrol cruisers, the border escorts, the modest carriers shown to the galaxy, were only the visible fraction. The real strength was kept far from curious eyes, buried behind layers of misdirection and sensor decoy fields. Humanity had studied every major power in the galaxy, measured their weapons, analyzed their strategies, and quietly developed counters for each one. In a nebula the Council avoided due to sensor distortion, the first dark fleet stirred. Hulls of obsidian alloys shifted from passive camouflage into active readiness. These vessels had never been registered, never been acknowledged, never been seen. Each one carried rail lances capable of accelerating tungsten rods to velocities that bypassed shield harmonics entirely. Their drives operated using skip-jump technology, precise, short-range spatial slips that allowed instantaneous repositioning, a capability the Council believed impossible. Human engineers had achieved it years ago and simply kept it buried. AI battle networks awakened next. These weren't the limited tactical systems shared with the galaxy. These were fully integrated strategic intelligences designed to coordinate across entire theaters of conflict. They operated within strict ethical constraints, but those constraints had never restricted tactical efficiency. The moment hostilities were authorized, the AIs linked into a mesh across Earth's hidden fleets, mapping Council command structures and identifying every military asset capable of threatening human stability. Elite units mobilized as well. SAS Interstellar prepared for zero-gravity insertions. Void divers calibrated their adaptive suits, built for infiltration in vacuum and high-radiation zones. Spectre recon detachments ran silent pre-battle simulations, testing infiltration routes through alien shipyards and command relays. These forces didn't exist on paper. They weren't listed in any interspecies agreements. They trained for operations the galaxy didn't even imagine humans were capable of. What bound all of this together was not aggression but philosophy. Humanity had always known it was a newcomer surrounded by empires older, larger, and more technologically entrenched. They understood the danger of that position. So they built their strength quietly, deliberately, ensuring that if the day ever came when they were forced into war, they would not fight for survival, they would fight for decisive resolution. The president had never intended to conquer anyone. He intended to remove every threat that believed Earth was prey. As encrypted transmissions spread, Terran Command confirmed one final directive. Unlike the Council, humanity would not target civilians, economies, or infrastructure unrelated to military aggression. The objective was simple: disable the Council's ability to impose dominance ever again. No territory would be taken. No species would be subjugated. No worlds would be claimed. Humanity's war was one of precision, not annihilation. Far beyond the reach of alien scouts, the dark fleets aligned their formation and awaited the final authorization. The president's signal arrived in the form of a single coded phrase transmitted through deep space quantum relays. Every warship, unit, and AI in the network interpreted the message instantly. The era of restraint was over. The era of decisive action had begun. The first strike began without fanfare, warning, or theatrical declarations. One moment the Council's borders shimmered with the usual patrol routes, drifting civilian convoys, and complacent security grids. The next, their sensors blared error codes as shadows emerged from regions their maps had labeled uncharted vacuum. Human signatures appeared simultaneously across 12 sectors, arriving so abruptly that most stations believed it to be a system-wide malfunction. They had no idea the readings were accurate. They had no idea humanity had positioned its fleets with mathematical precision long before diplomacy collapsed. Over the Council's largest military shipyard, a Terran supercarrier materialized from a skip jump that bypassed every early warning layer. Workers and commanders froze as the massive silhouette eclipsed their artificial sun. Before they could react, the carrier deployed drone lances, autonomous kinetic projectiles guided by micro-AI, each one aimed at a critical point in the shipyard's framework. The impacts were silent in vacuum but catastrophic in effect. Entire construction scaffolds collapsed in synchronized cascades. Thousands of half-built warships erupted into fields of molten fragments before alarms fully activated. At the same time, human stealth frigates infiltrated the command networks of nearby defense outposts. These vessels emitted almost no detectable signatures. Their hulls distorted scans, and their comm systems mimicked background radiation. They slipped between sensor grids, injecting targeted disruptions that severed the chain of command. Admirals stared at blank monitors, helpless as system after system failed. In minutes, coordinated defense turned into chaos. A Council battle group scrambled to respond, launching dreadnoughts and cruisers from solar drydocks. They formed tight formations, reinforcing shields and locking weapons on the lone Terran supercarrier. They expected an exchange of fire, confident their numbers would overwhelm a single human vessel. Instead, the supercarrier's hull shimmered, and it phased into a skip-jump micro-shift, reappearing behind the fleet before their targeting systems recalibrated. Rail lances fired instantly, piercing the shield harmonics they had studied for decades. Council cruisers erupted into expanding clouds of metallic dust, their cores breached before their crews realized humanity had moved. Far from the shipyard, SAS interstellar operatives executed coordinated insertions onto orbital command platforms. Teleport beacons activated from disguised probes that had been drifting unnoticed for months. Human operatives materialized inside fortified corridors, neutralizing guards with non-lethal precision and seizing control rooms before any emergency protocols triggered. Their objective was not destruction, it was incapacitation. They shut down encrypted relays, locked out automated defenses, and sent false retreat orders to multiple Council fleets, scattering resistance across dozens of light years. Battlefield footage spread faster than the Council could suppress it. Civilian relays picked up shaky recordings of human ships gliding through enemy formations with impossible agility, weapons firing fractions of a second before alien sensors registered targets. Commanders who once mocked Earth found themselves watching entire wings disintegrate without landing a single blow. Other fleets tried to regroup deeper within Council territory, believing human advances would slow as they pushed inward. They were wrong. Human battleships arrived before they could form defensive lines, skip-jump drives placing them ahead of fleeing vessels. Alien crews panicked as they saw Terran ships reappear where they should not logically be. Every tactic the Council had relied on for centuries — phalanx formations, layered shields, saturation volleys — collapsed against weapons designed specifically to counter them. As dreadnought captains screamed for reinforcements, human AI networks intercepted and redirected their messages, replacing their coordinates with false data that led their allies in the wrong direction. Council fleets arrived at empty star systems while human forces dismantled strategic strongholds one after another. Across dozens of worlds, fear spread faster than damage reports. The Council had built its power on intimidation and enforced compliance. Now they faced an enemy who didn't posture, didn't negotiate, and didn't strike blindly. Humanity advanced with an efficiency no species had exhibited before. They didn't destroy civilian habitats. They didn't cripple neutral infrastructure. They didn't seize territory. Every strike hit only military targets, and every blow landed exactly where it hurt the most. By the end of the first day, alien analysts realized a truth that shattered everything they believed: the humans they mocked for decades hadn't been weak, only quiet. And now that silence had been replaced with absolute, unstoppable power. Council space fell into disarray as human forces advanced with unwavering precision. Within days, command networks that had dominated the galaxy for millennia collapsed into fragmented signals and contradictory orders. Entire sectors that once boasted impenetrable defenses now lay in stunned silence, their military installations disabled, their admirals missing, their fleets scattered. Yet despite the scale of the offensive, not a single civilian world reported bombardment. Not one colony found itself occupied. Humanity struck only those structures capable of waging war, and that discipline terrified the Council more than destruction ever could. On countless worlds, civilians watched human vessels bypass their orbits without even powering weapons. The sight confused them. The Council had warned for generations that humans were reckless, emotional, unpredictable creatures who would lash out in vengeance if given the chance. But the Terran fleets moved like surgeons, not conquerors. They ignored planetary infrastructure, ignored civilian transport lanes, ignored every opportunity to cripple a world's stability. Instead, they targeted shipyards, weapons depots, dark fleet bunkers, hyperspace interdiction arrays, and the central nodes of military influence. The message was unmistakable: humanity wasn't seeking control, they were eliminating threats. The Council leadership panicked. They convened emergency assemblies across multiple hidden chambers, each one arguing over who was responsible for provoking Earth. Some insisted on regrouping for a counteroffensive. Others shouted that their fleets were already beyond saving. Many demanded immediate negotiations, pleading that humans must be convinced to halt their advance before the Council's core systems were reached. For the first time in recorded memory, the Council's authority fractured. Desperation pushed them to attempt diplomatic channels they had long closed. Messages flooded every Terran relay: requests for conversation, pleas for clarification, claims that the Council never intended true harm. Some tried to blame rogue factions. Others pretended ignorance about their own threats. A few even attempted to portray themselves as victims of misunderstanding. They didn't realize humanity wasn't confused. They simply didn't tolerate coercion. When the president finally broke his silence, he didn't respond privately. He addressed every species across the galaxy through an open broadcast, one that overrode civilian networks, military frequencies, and encrypted Council channels simultaneously. The transmission showed no flags, no symbols, no military displays, only the president standing in a dim room, his expression unwavering. He began by recounting every violation humanity had endured: border intrusions, abductions disguised as scientific detainment, sabotage of Terran research stations, forced tariffs, and the long-standing intention to dismantle Earth's independence. He spoke plainly, without rage or embellishment, as if listing undeniable facts. Then his tone sharpened. "You threatened our home," he said. "You dismissed our restraint. You fed on fear and expected us to bow. Now you will understand the cost of mistaking patience for weakness." The broadcast triggered immediate uproar in Council chambers. Some species begged him to reconsider. Others demanded the Council surrender. Still others turned their fury inward, accusing their own leaders of provoking a catastrophe. Civilizations that had once accepted Council rule began openly resisting, emboldened by humanity's refusal to serve an empire built on intimidation. Throughout this turmoil, human fleets continued their advance, not with reckless aggression, but with flawless coordination. They dismantled long-range artillery platforms before they could charge. They disabled fortress moons without damaging the civilian structures beneath them. They captured command hubs intact, allowing future investigators to study the Council's coercive practices. Every operation reinforced the chilling truth: humanity wasn't fighting for resources, territory, or prestige. They were fighting to remove the ability of oppressors to ever threaten them again. This strategic clarity sent waves of fear across the Council hierarchy. They could understand revenge. They could understand conquest. But this kind of restraint, deliberate, ethical, and overwhelmingly effective, was something they had never prepared for. Council members began turning on one another, each faction trying to shift blame or secure safety. Some attempted to flee to neutral territories, only to find those territories now refusing them sanctuary. The galaxy had seen enough of council fear-mongering. Humanity had shattered their illusion of invincibility, and in doing so, triggered a collapse from within that no external enemy could have achieved. As Terran fleets approached the last fortified systems, one realization settled across the stars like a cold shadow: the Council had begged for negotiation too late. They had opened the door to conflict through arrogance, and humanity had stepped through it with a level of precision that exposed the Empire's fragility to all. The galaxy no longer feared the Council. It feared the humans who had ended their tyranny without ever losing control. The final phase of the campaign unfolded with the same clarity and control that defined every Terran action since the first strike. Human fleets reached the inner sectors where the Council stored its most guarded military assets: dreadnought reserves, command fortresses, long-range disruptor arrays, but found them already shaken by internal collapse. Without unified leadership, Council forces attempted scattered resistance that lacked coordination or purpose. Terran ships disabled them cleanly, neutralizing weapons far more efficiently than destroying them. Every engagement ended with human vessels intact and enemy defenses rendered unusable, leaving no doubt that humanity's objective was precision, not devastation. When the last major fleet control hub fell silent, human admirals issued a galaxy-wide command halt. Engines cooled across thousands of Terran hulls. Weapon ports sealed. Shield harmonics returned to standby patterns. The sudden stillness baffled alien observers who expected humans to capitalize on their momentum. Instead, the President transmitted an order to every commander: no further advances, no territorial expansion, no punitive strikes. The humans had achieved exactly what they set out to do: remove the Council's capacity for coercion. Nothing more. Across Council worlds, panic turned to confusion. Civilians braced for occupation, expecting foreign soldiers to fill their streets or banners to be replaced with Terran insignias. Yet no ships descended. No troops landed. Human vessels remained in orbit only long enough to confirm that hostile capabilities were neutralized, then withdrew without demanding tribute or imposing control. The galaxy had grown accustomed to conquerors. It had no framework for an opponent who fought with overwhelming strength yet refused to exploit its victory. The Council remnants scrambled to interpret the silence. Leaders who once wielded absolute power now found themselves irrelevant, stripped of the fleets that enforced their rule. Many attempted to negotiate terms that would preserve some vestige of authority, but humanity declined every offer that involved privilege or control. Terran diplomats met with independent planetary representatives instead, bypassing the Council entirely and signaling that the old order was finished. A convocation of liberated worlds soon formed, requesting Terran guidance to rebuild interstellar policy free from centralized oppression. Humanity did not dictate terms but provided a foundation: the Terran Sovereignty Accords, a charter emphasizing equal representation, voluntary cooperation, and strict prohibitions on forced compliance. The document spread rapidly, adopted by dozens of civilizations grateful for an alternative to Council dominance. Nowhere in the Charter was Earth named as a ruling body. Humanity positioned itself as a protector of mutual autonomy, not an empire. While these political shifts unfolded, the President addressed the galaxy one final time. His message carried the same calm authority that defined his declaration of war. But now the tone held something else: resolve without hostility. He explained that humanity never sought conflict, never sought territory, never sought influence. What they demanded was respect for sovereignty, and the right to exist without intimidation. The President clarified that the war concluded the moment the Council's ability to threaten that existence ended. "You believed we were dangerous because we refused to kneel," he said. "But understand this: we fight only when forced, and when forced, we end the threat completely. Let this be the last time any species mistakes peace for submission." His words rippled across the stars, reshaping perspectives in ways diplomacy alone never could. Species long conditioned to view humans as impulsive or unpredictable now saw them as something far more formidable, disciplined, principled, and impossible to coerce. Fear existed, but it was a fear rooted in respect, awareness that humanity's restraint was a choice, not a limitation. In the following cycles, as council symbols were dismantled and new alliances formed, a quiet acknowledgement spread through the galaxy. The war had not created a new empire, it had dismantled an old tyranny. Human fleets returned to their hidden stations, their presence felt only as a reminder of what happened when diplomacy was abused. The galaxy entered a new era, one defined not by domination but by the knowledge that somewhere on a blue world in the Orion Spur lived a species that sought peace above all. And yet, if pushed, would stand alone against an empire and win with absolute certainty.